larger than 400 or 500 cc's up here. And humans average about 1,500 cc's. Pygmy or something could go as low as 700 or so, 800. By the way, size of brain has nothing to do with intelligence within a species, as long as it's in the normal range. You want proof that nobody will argue with? On average, women have a brain 100 cc's smaller than men. That ought to lay to rest any notion that it has correlation to intelligence. What is it correlating to? Well, on average, women are probably that percentage smaller than males. So it reflects body size. Big people have big brains and little people have little brains. Are big people automatically smarter than little people? Of course not. And when you compare between creatures, between different species and what have you, then of course there's no comparison. For example, an elephant has a much larger brain than we do, but they're not that much smarter. So you're ready for the test. Oh yeah, there's always got to be a test. You know, we teachers don't get paid a whole lot, and one of the few joys we have in life is persecuting students with exams. So here it is. I expect a perfect score out of all of you, and I'm going to give you 1/2 second to answer. This is Australopithecus sediba. It's one of the recent heartthrobs in evolution. This particular creature was filled 2 entire issues of Science magazine. Also Nature. I mean, this is huge. Issues were sent out to high schools all over America to crush creationist opposition. Let's just apply your knowledge that we've just taught here. You get a chance to use it now. What about the nasal bones? This is a human, this is sediba. Are they protruding on sediba compared to the human? No, therefore it looks like what? An ape. That's what everybody says. What about the slope of the face? Give you a little help here, outlining. Looks like a, I mean, how difficult is this? You could teach this in school. I have. I've taught it in high school classes, and I get letters. They're just flipped out. They can't believe they've been given an opportunity to think. I invite them to disagree with me. It's obvious. I don't think I'd ever even teach this in most schools. So it looks like an ape, of course. What about the visibility of the orbits? This versus this. Sediba looks like a ape. And finally, cranial capacity. 400 cc's versus 1,500 looks like a ape. Yeah, what's your conclusion? It is a ape. This is not difficult. So we've pretty well settled it for sediba, haven't we? But wait! Remember that advertisement? But wait! Sediba has been reworked a bit. First of all, they wanted to get rid of the technical name. Nobody could remember it. They wanted to give it a name like Lucy or something that was catch on. So they had a competition for young people to name sediba. And the name that won was Karabo, which means the link. Apparently it's, I don't know, Afrikaner or something like that. The Mail Online is the online version of the London Daily Mail, which is the second largest newspaper in the UK. And they had an article that reveals what science is all about when you're in the field of evolution. You're going to see science at work here in behalf of evolution. This is going to prick your interest, I'm sure. A smile from a 2 million years ago. That's amazing. They found a 2 million-year-old smile. Are you kind of interested in what it was they found? Revealed. Oh, it's actually been revealed. This is not guesswork. It was revealed on the face of the missing link between ape and man. Well, let's look into this. Let's look at the new sediba that's been groomed for popular consumption. Love those ham bones. It says, meet Karabo. Probably our earliest ancestor and the missing link between man and ape. Seen for the first time thanks to this incredible portrait. They had somebody paint a picture. They said, put some ham bones on this, and I mean, it gets worse. It says, a curious smile playing on his face. What on earth would a fossilized smile look like? What would make it up? There are no bones in the lips, so no lip bones. How do they know it was smiling? Well, it was smiling on the portrait because the artist was told, would you like to be paid? He said, yeah, put a smile on it. A curious smile playing on his face. I love this next part. The eyes and the mouth are unmistakably human. Yeah, you got that right. They put a white sclera. There are no apes or monkeys with a white sclera. They all have a dark brown sclera. All you got to do is put the whites in the eyes, and people look at it and think, I don't know what it is about this ape, but there's something eerily human about it. Do you think they found, do you have any idea how poor the fossil record is for scleral color? Nada. But the artist wanting to be paid, and the smile, I mean, they just kind of put a little smile on it. And I love the ham bones, and it obviously gets regular haircuts to keep that well trimmed. It gets worse than this. It's a more human-like nose than we've seen before. He's just wrinkling it because he's smiling. Chimps can't smile. There's your hard data for you. They found a smile on Krabo, and I think you'll all agree, chimps can't smile. I don't know how much more evidence you would want to believe in evolution. Well, let's get on with our test. This is Australopithecus remitis, or Ardipithecus remitis, as it's called now. Remember, it was on the chart, one of the early ones. Just take a look at it. Is it a human or an ape? 300 cc, can't see in the orbits, slope face. I mean, this is duh. It's an ape. Of course, it's an ape. We don't even have to talk about this. This is Paranthropus boisei. Does it look like an ape or human? It's an ape, no question about it. Here's Cro-Magnon man. Does the nose protrude? Are the orbits cut back? Is it a large cranial capacity, actually about 100 or 2 cc's larger than average for humans? Is the face vertical relative to the zygomatic arch, part of which is missing right in here? When you look at all those questions, what's your answer? Does it look like a human or look like an ape? This is not difficult stuff. This could be taught in our schools. Probably be jailed for it, but it could be taught. But 3 ways to make an ape man. This exhausts all the possibilities. If anyone can think of a 4th way, drop by, I'll add it, okay? One way is combine parts from apes and humans. So you find ape fossils, human fossils, you put them together, declare them to be one specimen. So that's one way. What's the second way? Downscale humans. So if you find humans in the fossil record, try to find something about them that you could say they're really not quite human. That makes an ape man, right? And finally, the third should be obvious by now, upscale apes. Find apes and then find something about it. You could argue, oh, it's a little human-like. The smile might be more human-like. The whites of the eyes might be more human-like. Well, what about combining humans and apes? It happened with Piltdown Man. I believe he's carving the neck of a Stradivarius here, I'm not sure. He was discovered in 1912. Hey, that's an interesting date. 1925 was the Scopes trial. We've got a whole DVD on it. Blow your socks off if you're not familiar with the Scopes trial. If everything you've ever heard or read about the Scopes trial, particularly in the movie Inherit the Wind, if you assume everything is precisely opposite of the truth, you'll be right most of the time, and I established that with the actual trial transcript. I was the first person to write an article, a lengthy article on the Scopes trial. It actually went through the trial transcript, paragraph by paragraph. 1912, so 1925, this was the evidence for the origin of man. It was Piltdown Man, confidently dated at 300,000 years old. Anyone who doubted that would have been declared anti-science. What was the fossil evidence? It was a human skull combined with an orangutan mandible, molars from a chimp, orangutan mandible and molars, and a chimp canine tooth. And this fooled the scientific community for 40 years. It's said that there were many theologians who abandoned all notion that God created man specially, but rather created beasts which became humans because of this evidence. And 40 years later, they found out it was a hoax. Somebody who must have been a professional evolutionist did it because they knew what evolutionists were looking for, and they fed it to them. What they did is they kind of salted the Piltdown quarry. I visited. It's not far from Darwin's home outside of London in England. And here is the skull. The brown is what they found. The white is interpreted. if you look at the trajectory here, this is a large cranial capacity, certainly out of the range of any ape or monkey. Oddly enough, they found the nasal bones, and they protrude. Given the vault of the skull and nasal bones, you obviously have a human here. But the mandible isn't quite right. And the reason it isn't quite right is the hoaxer took a mandible from a female orangutan, just happened to have one with me. This mandible was donated to Piltdown Man. It was a modern orangutan, so they stained it up to kind of look like the skull. The skull is believed to have come from somebody back in the 13 or 1400s, the plagues that went through England. They had so many bodies, they couldn't even bury them in London. They took them out to quarries. So that's possibly the origin of the skull. But it was a modern, today type orangutan. The teeth had obviously been filed to get them down to the size more consistent with a human. And then they didn't have the canine at first. And I don't know if like the evolutionists have a god of their own or what, but they really wished they had a canine. And a canine tooth appeared in the quarry miraculously at the feet of the Roman Catholic priest Teilhard de Chardin. So anyway, they put the whole thing together. Problem was, whoever did the hoax, remember they used a canine from a chimp, so this is a chimp, it would be this tooth right here. And it's so pointy and long that nobody'd ever assume that had anything to do with a human. So the hoaxer filed it down, file, but he filed too far, filed into the pulp chamber. So now you got a hole going in there. Then took a piece of bone, cut it to shape, plugged it in the hole, sanded it off, so you got a plugged tooth. Easy to see the plug in the tooth. Now, any critical scientist looking at this plugged tooth could come to one of two conclusions. This is it. It exhausts all possibilities. One, this is a hoax. Two, this is the world's first root canal. So there's your choice. Well, mercifully, that one was laid to rest. There's probably a lot of mixtures of human and ape parts. After all, a lot of these fossils are found over 2, 3, 4 years and scattered all over the place. Who knows what you're getting together? Making apes out of humans. That happened with Neanderthal man. You probably heard of Neanderthal man. This is the way he was painted originally. Boy, isn't he, how would you like to run into him in the dark? Hey, and his wife is no sweetheart either over here. And for that matter, the kids are pretty ugly. This is really they had a statue of Neanderthal man, the husband and wife, presumably, or male and female, at the entrance of the Field Museum in Chicago. And it was so frightening. They said when the kids would come through on field trips, they would run to get past this. Well, it was later found the whole thing was a complete misrepresentation of what the fossil looks like. We have hundreds of fossils of Neanderthal man today. We have every single bone in the body, including the hyoid bone up here in the neck, which is hooked up to some muscles that go are involved in speech and what have you. So anyway, that's the way it was portrayed. What is reality? Here are the actual skeleton. Is the actual skeleton of Neanderthal man. I can tell you as a human anatomist, absolutely human, no question about it. Now, is there anything distinctive? Oh, yes. But there's distinctive features in Australian Aboriginals, in Asians, in Nordics, in Eskimos. You can sort them all out. I had a colleague at Washington University School of Medicine, much older than I, who after the Second World War was involved in the body repatriation program, and they would go to battlefields and sort out the bodies as to nationality and try to restore them. And they got very good at it. So yeah, there's some idiosyncrasies. Skull has a bit of a bun on the back. The mandible's quite large, always had room for its third molars, the wisdom teeth, and even had a retromolar space behind that. But absolutely human. They had a fellow by the name of Jay Matterns, who's an expert at taking a skeleton like from a murder victim and calculating how deep the flesh would be and then covering it over. And he's been good enough at it to actually produce a recognizable human being from the skeleton to show who the murder victim was. Well, they had Jay Mattern work on Neanderthal man. And from the neck on down, I mean, absolutely human, no difference whatever. The head, the brow ridges are a bit pronounced. And the ears and nose are quite big. But you know, he was told to make the big ears and nose because it was turning out to be like way too human. And so they put a really good honker on him. So, the bone is back here, but the flare, you can do pretty much what you want. And the ears, I could tell you, hey, this is a plastic skeleton, but let's say it were real. I knew this person when he was alive. I mean, the ears were like this. You could say, I'm not sure I believe that, but could you prove me wrong? Oh, you should have seen the nose. It was out here. You see, you can play games with certain parts, and indeed, the poor artist does what he's told to do, or she, as the case may be. People say, yeah, but what about this brow ridge? I mean, that definitely was there. Here's Neanderthal man right here, and a brow ridge or the torus. Now, as I look around, I see people where the light hits. Some have a bit of a brow ridge, some don't. Australian Aboriginals come close to this, 100% human, of course. But what about the brow ridge? Well, it's not just adults that have been reconstructed from the bones. Children. Here's about a 13-year-old girl that was reconstructed based on the bones. And if this little gal were sitting in the audience today, we'd probably tell her that her clothes are a bit shabby. She should have dressed up a bit and maybe run a comb through the hair. Other than that, cute little girl. In fact, the only thing I can see in this little girl that would even make me look twice, the lips are a little full. But there are no lip bones. I mean, they had to do something. You just can't let this be a 13-year-old girl. It looks like anyone you see walking down the street. Also, where's the torus? The children didn't have a torus. It appears to develop with age, possibly great age. We believe these individuals were humans who survived or lived after the flood. And things must have been rough. They lived in caves anywhere they could find a place. I was in Grand Canyon once. They told me it never rained, so I didn't bring a shelter with me. I got down to the bottom and it rained. So don't let anybody tell you it doesn't rain in Grand Canyon in the bottom. And I crawled into a cave to get out of the rain. Scorpions and all. I was bats. I was in the cave. So I mean, you get what's available. And these were big, robust people that obviously lived a tough life. In fact, Neanderthals not only made tools, they made musical instruments. One burial site had a couple of flutes with holes and positions to be playable. They buried their people in certain ritual positions. You never see a monkey or an ape carefully arranging the body for burial. And what's really amazing is they engaged in some medical and surgical procedures. For example, we've found many Neanderthals who have evidence of broken bones that have healed straight. They had to put some kind of a splint on it. What's really amazing is they find Neanderthals where there's been an amputation. And the person obviously survived it because the bone is healed over smoothly. It's not just a jagged end. They had to stop the bleeding, stitch it up, presumably fight infection somehow. I don't know if you've ever seen an ape do an amputation, but it's a grisly sight. It's, so 100% human. Everybody on board with that? I mean, do all the criteria, vertical face, orbits cut back on the side, protruding nasal bone. And we have hundreds of these specimens, almost every continent.